Excuse me, sir, I don't know your signal.
You may call me Captain.
You sing, you begin with do, re, mi.
Do, re, mi.
Do, re, mi.
In the late 1960s, The Sound of Music was set to become one of the most loved films of all time. But behind the beautiful scenery and joyful songs was a storm of untold stories and real-life drama. This wasn't just a smooth movie shoot. It was filled with surprising struggles, tough conditions, and moments that nearly stopped the production. From dangerous boat scenes that almost ended in disaster to actors freezing during summer festival shots, filming in Austria was far from easy. And here's a shocker. One of the lead actors actually hated the movie and mocked it during filming. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden truth behind the making of The Sound of Music and share the wild, little-known stories that changed everything. Get ready to see this classic in a whole new light. The true story behind The Sound of Music. Long before The Sound of Music became a beloved Hollywood film, the real-life story of the Trapp family singers had already captured hearts around the world. The book, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers, written by Maria von Trapp herself, became a bestseller. But Maria later laughed at how different the musical version made her seem. She said she was not the sweet angel people saw on stage and screen. Maria was strong, stubborn, and fiery, far more bold and outspoken than the calm, cheerful character played by Julie Andrews in the movie. People who knew her agreed. She had a big heart, but also a big personality. Even before Hollywood got involved, Maria's story had already become a hit in Europe. In 1956, a German film called The Trapp Family was released. Ruth Luverick played Maria, and Hans Holt played the Baron. The film wasn't fancy or expensive, but it connected with people, especially those still healing from World War II. It was a simple story about love, music, and hope. That little German film turned out to be a huge success. It earned millions of Deutsche Marks in Germany, and even did well in American theaters. People were moved by the family's journey, and studios started to take notice. In late 1956, Paramount Pictures bought the rights to remake the German films in English. Their plan was to create a small, serious drama starring Audrey Hepburn, who was already a Hollywood superstar after movies like Roman Holiday and Sabrina. They brought in a television director named Vincent J. Dunhue to help lead the project. But after watching the German film, Dunhue surprised everyone. He thought the movie looked amateurish, but the story itself was powerful. Too emotional, in fact, for a standard drama. He had a bold idea. The story should be turned into a musical. He didn't picture Audrey Hepburn anymore. Instead, he imagined Mary Martin, a famous Broadway star, playing Maria. Paramount wasn't happy with the new plan, and when Hepburn became unavailable, the project fell apart. The idea was shelved, and it seemed like the Von Trapp's story might fade away. Then, in a twist of fate, 20th Century Fox stepped in. In 1960, they bought the rights to the story and the German films for $1.25 million. At first, the new project wasn't meant to be anything grand. The early idea was to turn it into a simple stage play with a few German folk songs mixed in. But the famous musical team of Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein had other thoughts. They were legends in the world of musical theater, known for shows like Oklahoma and The King and I. Rodgers and Hammerstein were not interested in just adding a few songs to a play. They said they would only work on it if they could write a completely new score from scratch. It was a bold choice, and the one that changed everything. Thanks to them, the world received unforgettable songs like Do Re Mi, My Favorite Things, and Climb Every Mountain. These songs gave the story heart, rhythm, and life. They turned the simple family tale into a full-scale musical masterpiece. Sadly, Oscar Hammerstein passed away from stomach cancer just 9 months after the show premiered. The Sound of Music became the final musical Rodgers and Hammerstein created together, their last and possibly most beloved work. The musical opened on Broadway on November 16, 1959. From the very start, it was a smash hit. It ran for 1,443 performances and won 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. Even before opening night, it had sold more than $2 million in advance tickets, a record-breaking number at the time. With such a massive Broadway success, it was only a matter of time before the story would be adapted into a film. When director Robert Wise took on the project in 1964, he had a big challenge ahead: how to take a stage musical and turn it into a movie that felt fresh, exciting, and real. Some parts of the story had to be updated for the movie. Since Oscar Hammerstein had passed away, Richard Rodgers worked alone and wrote 2 new songs just for the film: I Have Confidence and Something Good. These songs gave Maria more personality and helped show her feelings more deeply. But then, a new challenge came up. Casting the lead role turned out to be harder than anyone expected. So how did the casting process really unfold? Casting the magic. How the stars of The Sound of Music came together. The casting of The Sound of Music wasn't simple. It may seem now like everything fell perfectly into place, but at the time, things were full of doubt and tough choices, especially when it came to the 2 leads. Julie Andrews had just finished filming Mary Poppins over at Disney. She had charm, a beautiful voice, and a warm presence. But some of the studio bosses were nervous. They liked her, but no one was sure if audiences would come to see a movie just for her. She wasn't yet a proven box office star. Even director Robert Wise, though impressed, wasn't ready to bet everything on her. Quietly, he made a backup list. On it were big, well-known stars like Grace Kelly and Shirley Jones, women who already had a long history of success in Hollywood. Still, Wise had a feeling about Julie. And then one night, that feeling turned into certainty. Wise and the film's screenwriter, Ernest Lehman, were invited to a private showing at Disney. They got an early look at some unfinished scenes from Mary Poppins. It only took a few minutes of watching Andrews sing and move on screen before Wise and Lehman decided to her. Julie Andrews was offered a modest contract of $225,000 for The Sound of Music, and another movie afterward. While Julie was locking in the role of a lifetime, another casting battle was happening on the other side of the story for Captain Georg von Trapp. Christopher Plummer wasn't interested. He didn't like musicals. He thought the story was too sweet, too sentimental. In fact, he turned the part down again and again. He said no so many times that Wise started thinking about other famous men who might work. But Wise didn't want anyone else. He wanted Plummer. He knew that Plummer's strength, charm, and seriousness could keep the movie from feeling too soft. So Wise flew all the way to London just to talk to him in person and change his mind. They made a deal. Plummer could work closely with the writers to shape the captain's role. He didn't want to play a stiff cardboard cutout. He wanted Von Trapp to have wit, edge, and emotion. Plummer even asked for a solo song to show the captain's hidden feelings, and he got it. Finally, Plummer agreed to join the film, though he still rolled his eyes behind the scenes. He often joked about the movie, calling it The Sound of Mucus, but on screen, his performance gave the film balance and depth. Finding the 7 children to play the Von Trapp kids was an even bigger challenge. They weren't just looking for kids who were cute, they needed kids who could sing, dance, act, and feel like a real family. Hundreds of children auditioned. Some were already famous, like Kurt Russell and Patty Duke. Even Mia Farrow tried out for Liesl. She came back 3 times, hoping to win the role. But Wise didn't think she had the dancing skills or energy the part needed. Eventually, Charmian Carr was cast as Liesl. She wasn't a well-known actress, but she had grace and spark. And most importantly, she looked and felt right for the part. Daniel Truhitt landed the role of Rolf quickly. He had a strong singing voice and fit the role of the charming young messenger boy. But there was one strange twist. The first scene he ever filmed was actually the end of his character's journey, the moment where Rolf betrays the Von Trapp family and sides with the Nazis. Each child brought something special to the cast. Over time, the group really did feel like a family. They laughed together, trained together, and even got in trouble together. Their connection helped make the story feel real to audiences around the world. And slowly, the perfect team came together. Julie Andrews brought heart and joy. Christopher Plummer brought strength and sharpness. The 7 children brought energy and warmth. And together, under the direction of Robert Wise, they made something truly special. With such a talented team working on the film, you'd expect everything to go smoothly, but the opposite happened. So what kind of chaos took place behind the scenes that audiences never saw? The behind-the-scenes drama you didn't see. In early 1964, director Robert Wise and his film crew arrived in Salzburg, Austria, full of hope and excitement. They were there to make The Sound of Music, a movie about a singing family set in the beautiful hills of Europe. The plan was simple: finish filming in just 6 weeks, then head home with a beautiful movie in hand. But things didn't go as planned. What was supposed to be a short and cheerful job turned into a long, wet, and frustrating 11-week ordeal. The trouble started almost right away. Rain. Not just a little rain, but heavy, constant downpours. The green hills, the gardens, and the streets of Salzburg were soaked day after day. Scenes that should have taken 1 day to film ended up dragging on for weeks. One of the most joyful songs in the film, Do Re Mi, needed 9 different locations. It ended up taking 2 full months to shoot. Every time the weather seemed to calm down, it would start raining again just as the cameras rolled. The crew quickly had to come up with a plan. If the rain was too much, they rushed into nearby chapels or found space in small studios. But some scenes needed sunshine, bright, glowing, golden light to match the happy tone of the movie. So they brought in giant lights from all over Europe, trying to fake the sun. It was a huge effort, but it still didn't feel quite the same. But they made it work. Behind the scenes, life wasn't any easier. The crew wasn't small. More than 250 people had traveled to Austria to make the film. Actors, camera workers, costume designers, makeup artists, and many others. Finding places for all of them to sleep, eat, and rest was a big challenge. Feeding so many mouths each day was a job in itself. And as the filming stretched on, so did the costs. What started as a simple shoot quickly turned into a very expensive one. Julie Andrews, who played Maria, also had her share of problems. She was a natural brunette, but the filmmakers thought lighter hair would look better for her character, so they decided to gently highlight her brown hair. But something went wrong. The chemicals turned her hair bright orange. With no time to fix it properly, they rushed to bleach and dye her hair blonde. It wasn't her natural look, but luckily, it looked good on screen. Daniel Truhitt, who played Rolf, had an even harder time. He had dark hair, But the studio wanted him to look more Aryan with light features, so they bleached his hair again and again. The chemicals were harsh, too harsh. Daniel's hair was badly damaged. Later, he shared that he lost about half of it, and it never grew back the same way. For a young actor, it was a heavy price to pay. The role only lasted a few months, but the effects stayed with him for life, like a scar that never faded. As if the rain, hair problems, and growing costs weren't enough, the children in the movie started changing too. Time was passing, even if the film was supposed to happen in just a few days or weeks of story time. Nicholas Hammond, who played Friedrich, had a big growth spurt. He grew 6 inches during filming. At first, he wore lifts in his shoes to seem taller, but by the end, he was growing so fast they made him go barefoot to keep the height difference from getting too obvious. All these challenges made filming The Sound of Music a very hard job. Some days were cheerful, with songs echoing through the hills. Other days were muddy, wet, and full of tension. But somehow, through all the setbacks, the crew pushed forward. There were moments when people laughed, and times when they wanted to cry. Some scenes were beautiful because of the weather, like the soft mist that sometimes floated in the background. But most of the time, it was a race to beat the rain, to dry off costumes, and to keep the story moving. What kept everyone going was the heart of the story. It wasn't just about songs and hills, it was about hope, family, and courage. Even when the cameras stopped rolling and the crew wrapped up their long days, they could feel that something special was happening, even if it was buried under mud and stress. Charmian Carr, who played Liesel, was supposed to be one of the taller children. But Nicholas Hammond, who played her younger brother Friedrich, kept growing during the shoot. He sprouted up so fast that Carr sometimes had to stand on hidden crates just to look taller than him. And little Debbie Turner, who played Marta, had her own surprise. She lost some of her baby teeth right in the middle of filming. To keep her smile looking the same on camera, a local dentist had to make her fake teeth. It was just one more thing added to a long list of unexpected problems. Things got so confusing that during the big festival scene, where hundreds of extras filled the town square, many people were dressed in summer clothes even though the weather had turned freezing. They were all shivering and trying not to look cold, while pretending it was a warm evening. The magic of movies often hides the truth behind the scenes. But one of the scariest moments came during a scene that looks cheerful on screen. The one where the children fall out of a boat into a lake. Everyone splashes into the water laughing and swimming, but behind the camera, something was very wrong. 5-year-old Kim Karath, who played Gretel, couldn't swim. Julie Andrews, who played Maria, didn't know this until just minutes before filming started. The plan was simple. When the boat tipped, Julie would help the kids get to shore. But when it actually happened, she fell off the wrong side of the boat and couldn't grab Kim right away. The little girl went under. Julie swam faster than she ever had before to reach her. She managed to pull Kim out of the water, but the child had swallowed a lot of it and ended up vomiting after the rescue. The experience left Kim with a deep fear of water that stayed with her for life. Even scenes that looked peaceful and magical were hard to shoot. Take the famous opening shot of Julie Andrews spinning on a mountain, arms out, singing "The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music." It looks perfect, but in truth, it took many painful tries. Each time the helicopter flew by with the cameraman filming from the side, the wind from its blades hit Julie like a storm. It knocked her flat into the grass again and again. She tried yelling at the pilot to fly wider, to give her space, but he just smiled and shouted back, One more time! They did it 9 times in total. After every take, Julie had to spit out hay and dirt before getting back up. Charmian Carr also had her own painful moment. During the sweet gazebo scene for the song 15 Going on 17, she had to dance and jump in a romantic little number. But the costume team had forgotten to put rubber soles on her shoes. When she jumped during the scene, she slipped hard, crashed through a glass pane, and sprained her ankle. The crew quickly got a stand-in ready to take her place. But Carr insisted on finishing the scene herself, injury and all. She danced through the pain, and most people watching the movie never noticed that her ankle was wrapped in a bandage during some of the shots. Not all the challenges were physical. Some were emotional, and some were self-inflicted. Christopher Plummer, who played Captain Von Trapp, didn't like the film, so he found comfort in Austria's delicious food and wine. He ate pastries, drank local wines, and relaxed between scenes. The only problem? His waistline grew too. The costume team had to take out his clothes and sew them again to fit his changing size. During the emotional Edelweiss scene, one of the film's most touching moments, Plummer later admitted that he was actually drunk. Looking back, he called himself a spoiled young actor who didn't fully appreciate what he was a part of at the time. He didn't realize how special the film was, or how much it would mean to people all over the world. The child actors had more to deal with too. Besides the near drowning of little Kim, they had to train for weeks before filming ever started. One of the hardest parts was learning to sing and ride bikes at the same time for the cheerful do-re-mi scene. It looks effortless, but it took 2 full months of practice to get it right. And because the children were minors, the film had to follow strict labor rules. They could only work a few hours each day, which meant everything had to be carefully scheduled. Sometimes, other productions would use double casting, hiring 2 kids to play the same role, one for mornings and one for afternoons. But The Sound of Music made do with just the 7 originals. That made planning even harder, but they stuck with it. There was one more secret behind the scenes, and it stayed hidden for almost 60 years. Christopher Plummer, while perfect in his acting, wasn't confident in his singing voice. During filming, when it came time to sing Edelweiss, the studio didn't think his voice was strong enough. So, without telling the public, they brought in a professional singer named Bill Lee. His voice was blended with Plummer's to create a smoother, richer sound. For decades, no one knew. It wasn't until 2023, nearly 60 years later, and after Plummer had passed away at age 91, that his original, untouched singing version was finally released. Fans got to hear what he really sounded like in that moment. It added a whole new layer to the film's history and to the legacy of a man who had once rolled his eyes at the movie that helped define his career. When the filming finally ended after 11 long weeks, everyone was tired. Their boots were soaked, their nerves were worn thin, and their patience had been tested again and again. But when the final movie was released, the hard work showed. Audiences all over the world didn't see the struggle. They saw a joyful family, beautiful scenery, and music that lifted their hearts. Nobody watching could guess how many times the rain ruined a shot, or how many actors sat under heat lamps trying to dry off. They didn't see the burned-out lights or the makeup artists fighting to hide orange or damaged hair. All they saw was magic. In the end, The Sound of Music became a worldwide success. It won 5 Academy Awards and earned nearly $300 million at the box office. Behind all the songs and sunshine was a storm of challenges. Bad weather, growing kids, sprained ankles, fake teeth, bad hair, near drownings, and last-minute rescues. But through it all, the cast and crew kept going. They pushed through each long day, each difficult moment, and each unexpected problem. And somehow, what ended up on screen looked easy. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.